Welcome everyone. I'm Bonnie Low-Kramen. I'm the author of Be the Ultimate Assistant. I'm a speaker and a trainer, and most of all, I am a human who cares deeply about this issue, this global epidemic that is sexual harassment. My goal for this presentation today is to give you a lot of up-to-the-minute data, to offer you language that will support you in order for you to share this information with your leaders and your colleagues. Only that is going to help us solve the problem as we raise awareness all over the world. For 25 years, I worked as the personal assistant to Oscar-winning actress Olympia Dukakis, and on the slide are some of the photos from my career. You know, as I look at these photos, the memories, of course, flood back. But one of the memories I have is that Olympia was in show business, and I was with her at her side for 25 years. And I recall vividly that she would often come back from Hollywood and tell me horrifying stories of how women were treated in Hollywood, especially assistants, sexually harassed, bullied. So, you know, this issue is not really a surprise to me at all. And as I have found out, it's not really a surprise to most women. The silence is finally broken. In 2017, oh my goodness, I just want to bring you up to speed. You'll recall the man on the left who has now been accused by more than 80 women of sexual harassment. That December in 2017, the Time magazine named the Silence Breakers as the Person of the Year. So, wow, did this represent a big shift in what had been going on? Because really up until that point, there had been a lot of silence and a lot of pain and suffering going on behind the scenes. And now all of a sudden this was front page news, and this was enormous. It just seemed like every single day there was a story in the headlines. So here's an image of some of the places that I've been in the last 7-8 years. I've been in 14 countries, and I've had assistants and managers in my audiences from over 40 countries. And as much talking as I do, I listen twice as much. And I can tell you that this issue of sexual harassment and bullying is an issue everywhere I've gone. That the women all over the world are talking about this. And actually, when I spoke last year in Munich, and I had assistants in the audience from over 20 countries, it was so interesting because it was November, right after the October of 2017, actually, and the assistants there were so relieved about what was going on in America, because what that was doing was making it safer to begin the conversations in their workplaces. So, you know, frankly, I'm happy I lived to see the day that we're talking about this issue with such openness, and that's going to be part of the long-term solution for sure. Let's be clear. I'm a feminist. I'll name it, but this is not a women's issue. This is not a men's issue. This is a human issue, and I'm not here to say that this is women versus men, even though what I'm going to be sharing is that women are the primary targets of sexual harassment. But if we are to have a long-term solution for ourselves, for our daughters, for our sons, for the people coming up behind us in the workplace, if we're going to finally break the cycle of these negative behaviors, it is going to take all of us. It is going to take all of us. This is an absolutely human issue, and there's a lot at stake. And what I mean by that is, you know, when I'm in conferences and workshops, and it is clear that most of the attendees have experienced some form of bullying, and sexual harassment is just one form of bullying. It's typically 70% of our audiences who have witnessed or experienced it. And when I ask the question, so the trauma of bullying, of these behaviors, are, the feelings that come from these behaviors, I think you'll relate, are things like anger and sadness and depression and distraction and resentment, right? I'm sure you can relate to one of those. And it's traumatizing. I will ask audiences, how long does the trauma last? Does it last just the day it happens, or the week it happens, or the month it happens? And they yell back to me, no, it lasts for years. It lasts forever. And my goodness, that cannot be okay with anybody. Not anyone. No, really, I get tongue-tied when I say it. It's not okay. So here we go. Since 2017, 414 people have been accused of sexual harassment. Many of them have been prosecuted. Some of them are in jail. Just seven of them are women. And only 8 of the people accused of the 414 was the relationship consensual, that they were in an actual relationship. So these were instances of abuse. So wow, oh wow. I'm sure some of these faces are familiar to you. Heads have been rolling since 2017. Seriously, isn't it true that not a week goes by that we don't hear about another case, a high-profile case of a person being accused? And it's not only entertainment, is it? It's sports and the corporate world for sure. And there's a lot of money at stake, a lot of humans at stake. So that's what I want to talk about today. Here are some of the women who have accused people of sexual harassment, mostly men, of course. There's been a new hashtag. We know about Me Too and Time's Up, and the newest hashtag is hashtag AskHerMore. AskHerMore. Again, it's making reference to the fact that the silence is broken. Ask the women in our workplace, is there a problem? What are you experiencing? We, the big we need to make it safe in our companies, in government, to say what's really going on. Because I think it would also be logical to understand that when a person is traumatized, as these women have been, it is taking up a lot of really valuable and massive real estate in someone's mind. You get distracted, we're worried, we're upset, and those feelings detract from doing excellent work. I think that's absolutely true, and I hear it from women all over the world. But here's also another factor. The women on the slide, for the most part, are famous. I'm not famous. I'm pretty sure that most of the people listening to this presentation are not famous. So what do we, just everyday women, do about this problem? That's part of the reason I'm doing this presentation, because we're not millionaires and we don't have money to hire high-priced lawyers and bring these cases, and we don't want to bring cases. So it's complicated and messy, and that's what I want to share. So here's some more data. That since 2017, there's been an all-time high instance of cases that have been brought to civil court and through the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. You see on the slide, 2017, 6,696 cases, 2018, 7,500 cases. What this is indicative of is that women are finally, because of what's gone on since 2017, they have felt safer to finally speak up about these issues, about what's really going on in the workplace. And some good things are happening as a result, but it's pretty messy right now still. But I speak with women all over the world, and they are not feeling so alone anymore. It's in feeling alone that silence has been reigning supreme. And if I have anything to do about it, silence is not going to be permitted again until this problem is over. As I mentioned, sexual harassment is only one form of bullying. This thing is a global epidemic. And it's hurting companies. It's hurting companies, and it's hurting the human beings in it. And that there's so many reasons why we have to finally address it. Let's be clear about what bullies do, the kinds of behaviors that are exhibited in the workplace day in, day out. We're talking about yelling and ostracizing and using profanity, humiliation, nasty gram emails, threats. I feel sure these behaviors look somewhat familiar to you, and I just want to be clear about what we're talking about. And still, right now, it's February of 2019, and there are still 0 laws in the United States against workplace bullying, in part because leaders are having trouble defining it. There are laws against sexual harassment, though, and that is why we have all of these cases being brought forth. Companies are paying a very high price for tolerating these behaviors. Certainly, one of the high prices they're paying is in actual dollars and cents, because it's costing money to settle these cases. But it's costing more than that just to settle cases. It's costing companies in the high turnover, the revolving door of staff. If there's a bully, if there's a harasser, it's chasing good people away. And before they quit, it's pretty safe to say they may not necessarily be doing great work, mainly because they're preoccupied and worried and sad and all of the other feelings. Lost productivity, absenteeism. We know what that is, people just staying home and not working. And then there's presenteeism. Presenteeism is the phenomenon where a staffer is at their desk. Oh, they're there, but they're not really there. They're doing the bare minimum to do their job. Sabotage. Some staffers say, why should I work so hard, and perhaps I want to take some kind of revenge. So we see those kinds of behaviors in the workplace. And certainly low morale is part of this. When staffers do not feel that leaders have their backs, not leaders, not HR, recruiters play a part in this. We need them to be more proactive in addressing these issues. When they see a revolving door of people, it's a really high price company. So let's check out some latest news from lawyers. I happen to have a dear friend who is a litigator, and there have been lots of stories in the news. All you have to do is Google it. The latest news is that lawyers all over our country are being contacted by leaders of companies to say, what kind of new policies do we need against sexual harassment? How do we protect ourselves? What kind of training should we be instituting so that A, we don't have to pay big money in settlements, but B, to solve the problem? And I see this as very good news that law firms are being involving themselves in setting policies and creating new guidelines that actually work, because lots of companies have rules about sexual harassment, but some of those same companies do not put muscle into those policies. And it's an interesting new day. So that's an interesting development. Assistants are reporting from all over the world that because of this explosion of exposure of this problem, that it is making it easier to have these conversations with leaders and HR, and that leaders and HR folks are actually initiating some of these conversations that are, so some of the things we're hearing are Christmas party policies, no alcohol, a hugging policy about, just make sure that a person is okay with giving a hug. Another policy about dating. Some companies have actual dating policies. So I see this as messy and complicated for right now, but it's a good thing that these conversations are happening, and that assistants, our very best move is to be honest about what we see and what we hear and keep it fact-based. And then leaders are open to these conversations finally. I don't think that they can avoid it any longer, given what's gone on since 2017. With every day, there's a new story. So they are taking a new look at the team. And, I've heard so many stories about how some leaders protect the rainmaker, the person who's bringing in a lot of money at a company. And now there's being a fresh look being taken towards those harassers and bullies, because what's also true is, well, okay, a rainmaker might be protected, but how about what's going on in the department where there's a revolving door of people and how much money that's costing? So it's a really interesting time with some very much heightened awareness. And then HR, I spoke at HR Southwest in just this past October, and there were 2,300 HR professionals at the conference. And what I understood, I was speaking about bullying while I was there. And I sat in on several sessions about workplace bullying and hearing from different speakers and different attendees about how one of the biggest responsibilities HR has right now are doing the investigations to these cases that are going on. So I felt kind of sorry for them because of all of these cases. If there are thousands of cases, somebody has to investigate them, and it's time consuming and it's hard, really hard. So we absolutely need training. We need to bring the experts in to make it as easy as possible. Mainly, we need to speak the truth about what's really going on. And then there's coaching and education. Sometimes assistants will say, oh, finally, the harasser has been fired. And and they've been harassing for 2 years, 5 years, whatever. And I think, that's not necessarily the answer. You might think, oh, Bonnie must be in favor of firing. And I'm not a fan of firing. I think there are some really talented people in our workplace, and some people are coachable and can be educated, because if we fire harassers without any coaching, or without telling them what's the real reason, then they're only going to go on and do these behaviors somewhere else. And that's not going to serve any of us. So we need talented coaches who are knowledgeable about this problem, and we need education that is up to the minute, quality education based on in fact, and about what is needed to move, to break the cycle of these negative behaviors that are going on in the workplace. I think you will understand that the elephant in the room here with this subject is speaking up. The elephant in the room, the thing that we know is messy and complicated and not black and white. And the only way we can move this problem into a solution is to speak up, is to say the truth about what's going on. And it feels like a risk. I know it feels like a risk, and it takes courage to speak up. But here's the thing, the fact is that if a harasser, if a bully is harassing one person, the chances are very good they're bullying and harassing more than one person. So if this is happening to you, you're not alone, probably. And it's important to connect with our colleagues and take the risk to say, is this happening to you too? This is happening to me. Is this happening to you? So what's happening to we humans in when we are harassed? Oh my gosh, I have spoken directly, firsthand information from assistants and managers who are suffering a form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. When you're traumatized, human beings manifest it in different ways. And some eat too much, some smoke too much, some drink too much, some take drugs, some are depressed. And I've met more than one assistant who've had nervous breakdowns and have landed in the hospital. And I'm here to say it's not worth it. And we must figure out ways around it. Like this is not okay. This is taking we're paying too high a price for these behaviors. So what's happening with solutions now that leaders and HR and assistants are finally talking? What's happening is that there are new programs being brought on to address these issues right at onboarding. And they are called zero tolerance policies. So it is clearly set out what are the repercussions, what's the accountability for these issues when they arise. It's important that companies and leaders communicate these policies both in writing and verbally. I mean, what I see all over the world is that companies could do a whole lot better on company websites about being really clear on what these policies are. And that way, anybody interested in working at your company will know where your company stands on these kinds of human issues. It's so important to enforce the policies that are so carefully set forth. It's important to be fair about those policies, because I can tell you, and you probably know, assistants see and hear everything, and they know when things are not fair. Staff knows. They see and hear. They may not say it, but they see and hear everything. We've been hearing a lot about cultures of respect. Let us build cultures of respect in our workplaces, because then we will see the turnaround of higher retention and higher productivity. Many companies have created safe hotlines where it is anonymous, it is safe. I've also heard from assistants who are working with companies who have hotlines, but they're not safe. They don't feel safe to use them because this information has been used against staff. I just feel it's important to say what this is. I mean, you know, this issue has been brewing for a lot of years, decades and decades, right? So we didn't get here in a minute. It's going to take a while to get out of it, and it's going to be messy and complicated. So I just feel it's important to name some of the obstacles that are still in our way, and that companies are handling them in the best way they know how. And I certainly want to be a resource for that. It's also important to acknowledge that there's been some backlash to the whole Me Too and Time's Up movements. Perhaps you've read about them. Things like men out and leaders outwardly saying things like, well, you know what? I don't think we're going to hire any women because it's too risky that they might accuse us of something. You know, we don't want any female managers. You know, the pendulum is swinging wildly. Clearly, there's been a lot of accountability since 2017. And to that I say, well, you know what? We had many decades where harassers were not being held accountable. And so finally, the pendulum is swinging back. And, the idea of not hiring women is not only wrong, but it's not smart either. I mean, how about harassers, just keep your hands to yourself? How about that for an idea? And then there won't be any reason to accuse. It's also true that a diverse staff, a diverse leadership is a stronger one and a more effective one. So it is valuable to have multi-ages on a team, and men and women. So to leave women out because of this is not smart. And then it's also important for me to say that there have been women who have wrongly accused harassers. And what I see to be true, and in the research I've done, of course those cases make headlines. They are such a small percentage of the women who have to muster up tremendous courage to come forth and say what's happened to them. It is wrenching. I'm a person who's been bullied, both professionally and personally. I've had sexual harassment happen to me. Fortunately, not violent, but I get it, and I understand what it feels like to have your body judged and commented on. And I can tell you from personal experience, it feels awful. So there you go with the backlash. And I think that's part of the price we're going to have to pay to expose this problem for what it really is, and for us to move towards realistic and reasonable solutions. Let us understand that it is not going to be clean and neat, tied up with a bow. This is a dark, ugly problem. And so it's going to take some hard work here. So what do we do? What do assistants do who are not famous and not millionaires? That there's power in numbers, that we need to gather, we need to find our mentors, experienced people in our workplace who care about cultures of respect, and to actually ask those questions. We need to seek our mentors in order to get help with these issues. I think, mentorship and partnership and collaboration are the words of this decade that we're in right now and into these next 10 years, is that, we've got a very complicated workplace, and so we need our colleagues. It's important with these issues of bullying and harassment to not isolate, to not be alone in the issue. That's a formula for failure. I would urge you to not suffer in silence or in solitude any longer. There are people in our workplaces who want to help. I see it more and more, and I urge you, please, at the end of this presentation, you'll see my email address, and I certainly want to be helpful. Very important to document what's going on and share with your leaders. Fact-based reporting is essential. It's not enough to say, oh, Joe always looks at me and comments on me. No, it's really imperative to say, on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, this happened, and on Friday, this happened. It's specificity, details, because there's no arguing with documented details, and even better if there are witnesses who heard what was going on. And then, of course, use the hotline if you feel safe to do so. Under all circumstances, we have to break the silence around this problem. We need to speak truth to power because they need to know. In my work traveling around the world, I have occasion to speak with leaders and managers, and I say to them some of the issues that I'm hearing about, and they say back to me, Bonnie, if nobody's complaining, I think there's no problem. And you know what? That makes sense. I say to them, do you want to know? Some of your staff thinks that you don't want to know what's really going on in your company. And they say, of course I want to know. I want to know. It is part of human nature, I think, and especially with women. And of course, the assistants of the world are 95 to 98% female. There is a general resistance to speaking to leaders about tough problems. And so it's incumbent upon leaders to make it safe for staff to say what's really going on. Google did a study fairly recently, and what they reported that what staff is yearning for most in the workplace is psychological safety. Makes sense, doesn't it? Not money, not power, psychological safety. They want to feel safe in doing great work. And don't we all want that? I certainly do. One of the problems as I travel and I speak with assistants is that they say they struggle for the exact words to say. I know I struggled for the exact words to say. What's the actual sentence that I say when I'm confronted with my harasser, with my bully? And I did research and I found these wonderful books. One of the best books on bullying is Taming the Abrasive Manager by Dr. Laura Crawshaw. And then there's the other two on the screen, Speaking Your Mind in 101 Difficult Situations and Crucial Conversations is a terrific book. There's great power in getting someone alone and saying, I have something important on my mind. Can we find a time to talk? And then to say things like, I've given this a lot of thought. I need to talk to you about what happened yesterday when you said this. The only reason to look back at what happened yesterday is so that tomorrow is better. Next week's meeting is better. That's the reason professional and respectful people in our workplace behave in that way. The bottom line is this: great teams do not tolerate bullies of any kind. That's the bottom line. There is no room in the workplace of 2019 and beyond to have bullying. There's far too much at stake in our workplace at this point. We are in a global environment in this 24/7 nonstop. We've got this proliferation of technology. There's so much going on. We've got a lot of people working virtually, which actually is a help to the sexual harassment problem. But yeah, we need to understand that this is a zero tolerance problem. Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. I believe this is true, and I hope you also believe that this quote by Margaret Mead is true, because each of you who are listening to this presentation right now, you are that small group of committed people. You have the power to change the world of your department, of your company, simply by speaking up, by speaking truth to power. The staff of the world, they're talked about by leaders as the backbone of the company. You are the right arms to your managers. You are the face of the company culture. And if that's true, if those things are true, you bear great power and influence. And now is the time. It's absolutely the time to exert that power and influence when you see issues in your workplace, which in my training, it's not only about bullying and harassment, even though that's what this presentation is about. My suggestion and my encouragement is to speak truth to power about the things you see, about all the gaps you see in the workplace, whether it's the onboarding system, whether it's the disaster plan, but that's another presentation. I want to be a resource for you. Those of you who've heard me before and read I'm a writer. I write a lot for LinkedIn. I post things that I write, things that other people write. I'm the easiest person to find. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and Vicki Evans and I have the Be the Ultimate Assistant podcast, where we tackle the burning issues of our workplace. We did 2 episodes with Dr. Laura Crawshaw about workplace bullying. And of course, both of us do corporate training. And not only about bullying, but about all kinds of things. So contact me, and my website is betheultimateassistant.com. There are plenty of resources about bullying, of which you will find information about sexual harassment as well. You will have these websites on the slides as you listen to the recording. You can press pause and save these websites. Many of these websites are the ones I go to get the data in order to present it to you, and to work really hard to figure out solutions here. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for listening in. I want to invite you to a Be the Ultimate Assistant 2-day workshop that we're doing in 2019, that Vicki and we travel all over the world doing it. As I wrap up this presentation about Me Too and Time's Up and what to do now, I want to wish you all the strength and courage that you can muster. I know that the heart of the matter in our workplace is to collaborate with others and to speak truth to power. We're at a very important turning point, perhaps even a tipping point in our workplace. What I want is to change the world, and I want you to do it with me. I want to make this workplace and the world a better place, not only for yourselves and for myself, but how about for our daughters and our sons and our grandkids and the assistants coming up behind us and all the staff coming up behind us. It's time to break the cycle and to end the silence forever. Let us not shove any of this under the rug anymore. And the only time there should be silence from here on in is when we have solved the problem. So I thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you learned a thing or two that you can use immediately. I look forward to staying in touch. Bonnie at BonnieLow-Kramen.com. All right. Good luck. Bye.